So which questions did you folks have?
The first
One.
one, yeah.
I don't have it in front of me anymore because I have you in front of me. So if you would just read me the question.
Oh, how does inflammation play a role in the development of heart disease?
Okay. And what have you come up with?
We're still in the middle of looking for the answer. I don't know if anybody.
Sorry, I got kicked off of Zoom. I need to like fix something with my Wi-Fi because like it keeps crashing in the middle of class. So I just got back on.
Okay, which is why I just started recording it. I see you in group 1. Do you not see anybody else?
I'm there, but I didn't see what question it was. And then I think I saw an email from you, but now my email is one load.
Okay, so would you just read the question again, Tommy?
Yeah. How does inflammation play a role in the development of heart disease?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No problem.
So is the point that you have to, okay, so then maybe I should just go get a cup of coffee and let folks look for the answers. And then
I mean, well, that has to do, right, with like the arteries being like kind of what we were talking about earlier, right, with the arteries becoming clogged, and then like if there was like an injury to the artery that is like larger, and then it's easier for blood vessels to get stuck and clot.
right.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Right. What happens is, then just read me the question again.
How does inflammation play a role in the development of heart disease?
Okay, right. So you have, so that what Lindsay was saying, yes. Samantha, what do you understand about how inflammation might play a role?
Doesn't it lead to like a buildup of plaque?
It can, and it has to do with that, with triggering the immune system, but it has to do, yes, there's a number of things that are going on. Joey, what do you understand about it?
Yeah, just kind of what everyone had been saying before, that with the increased plaque, there's a greater chance that it clogs up and then you have a heart attack.
But what's causing the inflammation? Shuren, what do you think is causing the inflammation?
An injury or an illness.
Right. There could be an injury. I think in your video, I showed like the cross section of blood flowing through the blood vessels. And what happens is if you have plaque and there's like this fibrous cap on the plaque, we all have plaque in our arteries. It's just, unless you're born, I think when you're a newborn, your plaque will be clean. But what happens is that if you have high blood pressure or if you have high triglycerides, it affects the blood flow. And if that blood, as it's flowing over this cap, if you will, on plaque, it can, or just flowing through the artery, all causes some kind of injury that triggers an immune response. And that's what leads to inflammation. And as part of that inflammatory response, you have cholesterol moving into the artery wall, you have calcium, you have lots of other things moving into the artery wall. And high blood pressure is part of that. It can help, it may injure the artery wall. When you have an injury on the outside of your body, when you cut yourself and you have a scab, that scab heals and it can fall off. But if you're talking about what's going on inside the blood vessel, if it's high blood pressure or high triglycerides, and that isn't treated, then that injury doesn't stop. It just keeps on injuring the blood vessel wall. So you have a continuation of that insult to injury, if you will, until perhaps eventually the clot forms and blocks off blood flow. So I'm going to leave you folks to ponder what I just talked about. Make sure you understand it, because when we go back into the other room, then somebody will explain it because I want everybody to understand the questions, okay? So be smart. Oops, I did that wrong. Hi folks, what was your question?
Number 2.
I know, I don't have it in front of me.
It was describe the relationship between plaque, hypertension, arterial damage, and heart disease.
Oh my gosh, that's what I just told the other. I just went through, oh, okay. And I got confused. All right, so what do you understand is the relationship between the three?
The buildup of plaque leads to arterial damage, binds to the walls of arteries, and also narrows the space in which blood can flow, which leads to hypertension. And the combination of that arterial damage and the hypertension lead to heart disease.
So what we're seeing is a cycle of activities going on. Whatever triggered it, it could be the hypertension, it could be the arterial wall damage, and if you are treating the hypertension, then that takes one piece out of the equation. So that may stop injuring the blood vessel wall, and so that may help reduce plaque buildup. But if it's untreated, it just continues, and that can lead to the buildup of clots, which can ultimately cause heart attack. So refresh yourselves, make sure you all understand it. I'm going to go talk to the other groups, and then we'll go back into the classroom, and everybody will share their knowledge with everybody else, because that's why we're here. And ultimately, and I think I may have told you, in an exam situation, what I'll go through are these questions, and the exam will be like 10 questions, of which you'll answer 5. So it may be that this is one of those questions, though.
And Tim.
Yes, might.
Okay.
That's nice. All right. Okay, what did you folks have? What knowledge have you gleaned in my absence? Oh my God, you can't hear me.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, okay. There's just a response on your face. Because this is the best learning situation ever.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the question again.
So our question was about the difference between hydrogenated fat and partially hydrogenated fat, and we said that with partially hydrogenated, only some of the double bonds are removed, but with hydrogenation, you remove all of the double bonds, so everything is like completely saturated by, I think, hydrogen.
Yes, yeah. Hydrogenation is adding a hydrogen to what we say, adding hydrogen across the double bonds and opening up the double bonds, and now it becomes more of a saturated fat. Okay, wait, I have a note here that I have somebody unassigned, but they seem to have found their way. All right. So what was the rest of the question?
It was, how does hydrogenation of fat affect heart disease risk?
Okay.
And we found that partially hydrogenated fat is trans fats, whereas fully hydrogenated is saturated fats. And it seems to me, at least, like trans fats have the greater risk of causing heart disease, but both do have an impact on getting it.
Right. So trans fats, it has to do with the chemistry of the fat. And in the video, I talk about what's called the cis configuration and the trans, and it has to do with where the hydrogens are in relation to the double bond. So a partially hydrogenated fat, not all the hydrogens have been removed, and the double bonds that are remaining are now chemically different. They're in a different configuration. And back in the 70s or 80s, we were telling people to switch to margarine. We said, don't eat fat, don't eat saturated fat, and that trans fats, hydrogenated products were being on the market. When you take like a liquid vegetable oil that's highly unsaturated, you bombard it with hydrogens to make it more like an animal fat, in that it has more of a mouthfeel of, let's say, butter. You're making stick margarine, which I don't even know is out there anymore, but it would look more like butter, it would taste more like butter, but it didn't have cholesterol in it. And there was a time when we said, don't eat dietary cholesterol because it'll raise cholesterol in your blood. We know that's not true. And what we also know now is that the hydrogenation process that took these vegetable oils and made them more like solid animal fats, that those trans fats can have that are just as unhealthy as saturated fats, that they both can raise blood cholesterol levels. So we now tell people to not eat or to try to eliminate trans fats, because also what you need to know is that there are trans fats that are found naturally in full fat milk, in fat in meat, And so I'm not saying, we don't say don't drink milk, don't eat. We're not saying not to consume those products, but try not to get additional trans fats by consuming them in products that are made with partially hydrogenated fats. So I think, I'm not sure, it may be in the diet project I ask you if you think you consume any trans fats, and it may be if you're eating full fat animal products that you're getting some trans fats, but also if you're eating packaged foods. Now I think, I don't know if it was 2020 or 2018, trans fats were supposed to be taken out. There aren't supposed to be trans fats in foods anymore. I'm not sure if that regulation has been, if people are following that regulation, because, well, anyway, what were some of the benefits? None of you remember what I had said were some of the benefits of hydrogenating fat?
Doesn't it like improve taste, I think?
For some, it might, yeah, the fat has more of a mouthfeel, but also when it's more saturated, it has a longer shelf life. So in terms of product life, it was a benefit to have hydrogenated fats and partially hydrogenated and hydrogenated fats. But now we know that they affect heart disease risk. So we want you to watch them. Okay? So ponder that amongst yourselves, and when we get back into the classroom, one of you or all of you can share that with everybody so that everybody knows the answers to all the questions. Okay, which group number are you?
3.
3.
3. I think I need to go to 4. Hello. How's everybody doing?
Good, how are you?
Oh, I'm just going around to different rooms, seeing who's there. What are you eating? What's for snack? And what question did you have? What knowledge have you gained? What was your question?
The crash diet.
Our question was about the DASH diet.
And
so we figured out the DASH diet promoted low sodium foods and also foods that are rich in potassium, magnesium, and calcium, so that the main goal is to lower blood pressure.
Right. So, and I think this was who? Was it this somebody in this room's? Oh no, sure. That it's not so much that you're getting too much sodium that raises your blood pressure, but that you're not getting enough of the other minerals that can help lower blood pressure, and that the sources of sodium are the highly processed packaged foods. So in your diet projects, and I task thee, all of thee, with bringing this up when we go into the classroom, unless I remember, that in your diet project, I ask you to calculate what's called your sodium to potassium ratio. And that has to do with this particular topic. If your sodium potassium ratio is high, that means you're getting a lot of sodium in your diet in relation to potassium, and that may put you at higher risk for developing high blood pressure. So that's what that question on the diet project is about. And the idea is that with the DASH diet, when you were consuming lots of vegetables and fruits, you didn't eat all the ultra processed foods that could have been related to, could have been, again, the ratio or the relationship between the minerals that if it was out of whack was causing you to have high blood pressure. Now, I also said, please don't do this on your own. And please don't tell people who, with your knowledge of the DASH diet, if you have mild hypertension, it may help, but it may not. So somebody should only work with the dietitian and let their doctor know this is something that they're doing. Certainly eat more fruits and vegetables, but don't consume them in place of medication if you're not under medical supervision. So, okay. All right, I'm just going to check in with the last group. I guess if you want to leave and go back to the classroom, I don't have to let you out, do I? You're not held prisoners in there, are you?
Mm-mm.
All right, so you can, I'll see you in a bit. Hello, geniuses.
Hello.
What question did you have?
5.
And I understand that. I'm sorry. What was the question itself?
Well, it was
How
about,
does dietary fat affect cancer risk? Explain your answer, including information on what you think does affect cancer risk.
All right, share with me your knowledge. Chloe.
We saw that, like in your videos, like the transcript, you said that fat does have like make for an increased risk, but like also we also talked about like it's not one certain thing that will cause something. It could just be like combined with other things, this can lead to that. So it was kind of like something like that. Yeah.
It is confusing because if you had the textbook, there's a section in it on lipids and cancer, and I'm just not convinced that there is a particular fat that can cause cancer. And I think in the book it talks about what's called the P to S ratio, which is the ratio of polyunsaturated to saturated fats in the diet. And it's just too complicated, and I don't think there's enough data to support it. But there are certain food and lifestyle recommendations that can be made to reduce cancer risk. Don't smoke, you'll die. Alcohol has been shown to be related to increased risk of esophageal cancer, liver cancer. I made notes. Now, these are based on what we call epidemiologic studies when questionnaires are sent out to large groups of people. So you also have to understand that we're relying on memory of people, and when we ask them what they had in their diet, and then follow them over time, and did they develop cancer. But some of the patterns that show up are alcohol, smoking, diets low in fruits and vegetables. There's also been some interesting information on people who grill food and eat the burn part, that they contain what are called aromatic polycyclic hydrocarbons. You don't need to remember that, but it's the greasy part that gets charred that can taste really good, but that can also be carcinogenic. So it's recommended to, if you're going to be grilling a lot of food, maybe cut that part off. If you're only eating it once or twice, I wouldn't worry about it. But if it's a regular part of your diet, that might be a risk factor that's associated with diet and cancer. All right. And always exercise, don't smoke. Okay, so what I'm going to do, everybody can leave, and we're going to go back into the classroom, and then I'm just going to, somebody from your group or all of you go through the questions so that everybody has all the information, because ultimately it will make you a better person. But also when exams come around, when the exam comes, I'm going to be picking questions from these discussion questions for the exam. So I would like everybody to have that information, okay? All right, see you in the other room. I see you. Okay. Everybody back? All right, so what I would like is to go through the different questions and have somebody from each group just repeat the question, because you all have them in front of you. Repeat the question and then talk about what the answer is, because this is information that, as I just said, will make you a better person, enrich your lives. But not only that, it's something that might be on the exam that's coming up. And one of the questions, and whoever was in the DASH diet question, that's something that you need to understand for your diet project. So, okay, who was in group one? Nobody from group one?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, okay. So our question was, how does inflammation play a role in the development of heart disease? So what happens is the immune system is triggered by an arterial wall injury, and this can occur from hypertension, smoking, any of the risk factors that are discussed in the chapter. And we did a little bit more research, and we found that that would be considered a chronic injury, and an acute injury might be something like an infection that happens on the site of the wall. So when the immune system is put into play, that creates inflammation, because cholesterol, calcium, and other things move to the artery wall. And then also what happens is the amount of plaque that is within that and around and inside, like the artery, that amount increases, which then also makes it more difficult for blood vessels to move through it. And this can also lead to high blood pressure, which then makes it even worse. So if you don't treat your high blood pressure and it progresses it just kind of keeps re-injuring the wall and creating more inflammation and just persisting the issue. And then what can happen is it gets too hard for blood vessels to move through, and they become stuck, and that can create like a clot. And then that ultimately can lead to types of heart disease.
Right. So what we're talking about here is heart disease where blood flow is being cut off to the coronary blood vessels. Right. And that's not a good thing. All right. And who had described the relationship between plaque, hypertension, arterial damage, and heart disease? I figured out how to look at the questions while I'm looking at you. So group 2. Volunteer? Who was in group 2? Oh, okay, Gabby, thank you.
So the buildup of plaque causes both arterial damage and can lead to hypertension by narrowing passageways in the arteries. And both of these could individually or combined lead to heart disease if untreated. And if untreated, plaque can continue to build up. So it creates a cycle where it can only be broken if like the amount of plaque entering the arteries is reduced.
Yeah, or the person has a heart attack.
That too.
But, right. Well, their dietary changes may be able to reduce plaque. There are also medical procedures, stenting, but we don't talk about that in this class. But yeah, so there are other ways. But the idea is that it's just a cycle, and without breaking the cycle, the plaque will continue, the high blood pressure will continue, the arterial damage, wall damage will continue. Right. Okay. All right. Who is group 3? Somebody from group 3 with the difference between hydrogenated fat and partially hydrogenated fat, as well as how does hydrogenation of fat affect heart disease risk? May I have a volunteer?
Yeah, I'll take this one.
All right.
So with partially hydrogenated fat, only some of the double bonds between the carbons get removed, but with hydrogenated fat, all of the double bonds are removed. So like it's completely saturated by hydrogen, because when hydrogenation takes place, you're like adding hydrogen to the like the chemical structure. And so with partial hydrogenation, you create trans fatty acids because like the chemistry is like changed by like the removal of the double bonds, and trans fatty acids can lead to or it increases LDL, decreases LDL, and also increases the amount of triglycerides in your blood, and these can all lead to heart disease.
Wait, the decreasing LDL? Increasing LDL?
Increases LDL, decreases HDL.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, so and there is partially hydrogenated fat. There are trans fatty acids found in animal products, in full fat milk and high fat animal products. So the recommendation is not to eliminate those products from your diet, but to cut back on other products that may contain partially hydrogenated fat. And so in other words, to try to limit the amount of extra hydrogenated fat that you get in your diet. I think the slide says in the video that 20% of our of the partially hydrogenated or trans fats come from animal products, and the rest can come from diet. So the idea is to limit the amount that you get from other products in your diet. Okay, thank you. And who had the DASH diet, and why might it be effective? I'm going to have to take a snapshot and know who's in the group so I can cold call you.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Oh, do you want to?
No, go for it.
Got you. Okay. The DASH dietary approaches to stop hypertension. It's basically it increases calcium, potassium, and magnesium, and lowers sodium.
And how does it do that?
By eating like fruits, veggies, whole grains, low-fat dairy. Is that not right?
Well, that would get some credit, yeah. So the DASH diet, the dietary approach to stop hypertension, basically was a study that showed that folks who consumed a lot of vegetables and fruits were able to lower their blood pressure as much as some people that were on medication. But don't do this if you're not under doctor and dietitian supervision. And what this study showed was that it might not be so much that you're consuming too much sodium in your diet, but that you're not getting enough of the other minerals in your diet. So what I want you all to know is that in the diet project, there is a question where I ask you to calculate your sodium to potassium ratio. You just take the 3-day average of both of those minerals and you figure out the ratio, and it's either like, well, I follow the instructions, it'll tell you. I don't want you to say 1642 colon 3025. I want you to break it down to a smaller number. And what that does is let me know, or let you know, what the relationship between sodium and potassium is in your diet, because that can have an effect on your risk for blood pressure, hypertension. Okay, so that's something that I want you to do for your diet project. Okay, and the last question, dietary fat. How does fat affect dietary fat risk? May I have a volunteer from the audience, please? Emma, was that your group?
Yeah,
I
so
can
that
take
was
that
our
one.
group, and we discussed how obviously like a high fat diet kind of increases your risk, but also like there's not much like information. How you're also saying like the textbook doesn't really have like good enough evidence, I guess, that like some fats are better than others and stuff like that.
Very partial credit. All right, so yeah, the diet doesn't, the book, I'm not happy with what's in the book. I'm not convinced that there's any particular fat or type of fat that causes cancer. There's a whole hypothesis that unsaturated fats, because the double bond is unstable and that can cause you to, it's just not convincing. And I don't think talking about polyunsaturated to saturated fat, or what's called P to S ratios, I don't think that that's practical in a daily situation. So I think that fat may be fat and diet, the connection isn't clear to me. I do know that there are some other dietary factors. We know that alcohol can increase cancer risk. We know, well, non-alcohol things are like smoking, because you'll die. But that the charred portions of grilled meat can increase cancer. I don't know, I forget why, but there is data suggesting that these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which you don't have to remember, can increase cancer risk. And so in the summer, if you grill your meat a lot, maybe only every other time eat the grilled fat portion. But with respect to specific fats and specific cancer, no. There is some data suggesting that there may be a dietary relationship between prostate cancer and diet, but I don't have enough information that makes me comfortable making a general recommendation on what to limit or eliminate. Okay. So any other questions? Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Because I haven't quite figured out how to end these classes yet. So except saying bye. All right. Well, so next week we start with energy balance and weight control. So there are a couple videos there. And I don't know, if I don't have to be here on Tuesday, I don't want to be. If you want to talk to me, or if you want to see me, send me an email and I will be available. I mean, I'm not going anywhere, but I might want to go downstairs to watch TV. So if you want to get together, I'm happy, I'm here. So just send me an email and then I will certainly log on and we can see each other. I much prefer that to an email back and forth if you have questions. Otherwise, I will be seeing you next time. I'm recording this and I'll post it so you can get all this information again in case you just happen to miss part of it. I'll be curious to see. I guess it'll go into the different breakout rooms. Does anybody have anything exciting planned between now and next week? Do you do anything on weekends, or you're just staying at home, catching up on all those books and homework? No? Yes? All right,
There's a lot
guys.
of fun stuff to do on quarantine.
Is there a list? Does somebody have a list? Fun stuff to do during quarantine? Because if you have that list, send it along. Because otherwise, what was that thing about eating? I find that is a really good alternative, not in the long-term health, but I'm going to run out of praline pecan soon. So, okay, folks, take care of yourselves. I'm around. Just send me an email. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks, Professor.
Okay. Bye-bye.